For 8-year-old Vitka Sokolov, the morning of 1968 began with a chilling premonition. His father, a geologist, went on a long expedition to the far north back in the fall. He promised to return for the new year, but February was already burning out, and from it there was only an ominous silence. Mom, of course, tried to smile, but Vitka saw how primal horror settled in her eyes, how her hands trembled when she wrapped herself in her father's old pea coat, looking out at the snow-covered city from the window of their cramped apartment. Vitka was in the 2nd grade. He was a quiet and pale boy, with eyes that reflected unchildlike anxiety. He loved to read about the misadventures of polar expeditions, about the missing and frozen in the permafrost. He knew by heart all the symptoms of hypothermia and gangrene. But right now, all his thoughts were poisoned only by his father. He had nightmares about his father, turned into an ice statue, with eyes full of pleading, holding out his hands to him from under the snow. Outside the window, opposite the park, there was an ancient linden tree. In summer, she seemed harmless, but in winter she turned into a gnarled monster that bristled with icy needles. The branches creaked in the wind like bones, and their shadows danced on the walls of the room, turning the familiar space into a place of fear. Vitka tried not to look at the tree, but it seemed to hypnotize him, attracted him by some evil force. Sparrows and chickadees no longer flew to his windowsill. Only crows, cawing ominously and relentlessly, like harbingers of trouble. One morning, Vitka woke up from a nightmare. Looking out of the window, he felt a chill of horror. On the topmost branch of a lime tree, directly in front of his window, sat something. At first, he mistook it for a large shadow, but then he saw the outline of a huge bird. Not an owl, as in his children's books, but something more, something distorted, as if made out of nightmares. His eyes were huge and burning with hellish flames, and his beak was curved like a rusty hook. A wave of fierce coldness emanated from him, chilling the soul. Vitka screamed, but the sound stuck in his throat. He tried to turn away, but he couldn't take his eyes off the monster in the tree. The bird sat motionless, as if waiting for him. And suddenly, Vitka saw that she had something in her clawed paws. It was a small bundle wrapped in something dark and sticky, like tar or dried blood. Vitka felt nausea rising in his throat. The bird made a hoarse, guttural sound that rattled the glass in the windows, and dropped the bundle down. It landed on the windowsill with a dull, disgusting thud. Vitka recoiled as if from a leper. The bird, spreading its huge, webbed wings, disappeared into the gloomy depths of the park. For a long time, Vitka did not dare to approach the bundle. His whole body was shaking. He knew that there was something terrible there, something better not to see. But curiosity, mixed with fear, prevailed. With a trembling hand, he unwrapped the sticky wrapper. Inside was a crumpled piece of paper and what looked like a dried human brush. On the paper, written in a clumsy, trembling handwriting, were the words, "He's frozen. He's one of us now." The stench of death and decay emanated from the brush. Vitka screamed in horror and fainted. He woke up in his bed. Mom was sitting next to him, pale and scared. She stroked his head and whispered soothing words. But Vitka knew that this was not a dream. He could see the madness in her eyes, as she clutched her father's teddy bear keychain in her hand, as if trying to keep it from disintegrating. From that day on, their lives turned into a nightmare. Silence settled in the house, broken only by the frantic whispering of his mother and the ominous cawing of crows outside the window. Vitka stopped going to school, stopped eating, and stopped sleeping. He knew that his father was dead, that he had been taken away by the forces of evil living in the icy desert. And now they're after him. His mother spoke more and more often in his sleep, the words of the frozen north winds, words that Vitka could not understand, but which made his blood run cold. He could hear her whispering her father's name, mixed with some incomprehensible curses and pleas. One night, there was a terrible screeching sound through the window. Looking out, he saw a bird. She was sitting on a branch of a lime tree and looking at him with her burning eyes. An ice shard glittered in her claws. The bird scraped its claws on the glass, leaving a trail of blood. Vitka screamed and rushed to his mother. But she was already standing by the window, in her nightgown, barefoot on the icy floor. Her face was contorted into an inhuman grimace. Vitka had never seen her like this. There was something alien and sinister in her eyes. He noticed that her fingers were twisted unnaturally, as if she was trying to hold something that was tearing from the inside. "He told me to. He said that you should return to him so that he would not be alone," she croaked, and her voice was strange, as if from another world. An object flashed in her hand, not a knife, as Vitka had expected, but his beloved, old wooden spinning top, which his father had carved for him as a child. Only now the spinning top was covered in frost, and there was a drop of dark, frozen blood on its tip. Vitka realized that his mother was no longer his mother. Another entity had settled into her body, thirsting for blood and eternal cold. The mother stepped forward. Vitka tried to run away, but her gaze pinned him to the spot. She held the spinning top up to his face. The ice burned his skin. Vitka felt a chill creeping into his mind, a primal terror that he had never experienced before. The mother began to spin the spinning top slowly. It made a low, ominous sound, like the whisper of an icy wind. Vitka felt his body becoming light, weightless. His arms and legs began to go numb. His mother's eyes reflected not him, but a dark, bottomless abyss filled with icy shadows. She brought the spinning top to his forehead, to the so-called third eye. Vitka felt a sharp pain, as if an ice fragment had pierced his brain. Then the darkness. Not just darkness, but an all-consuming, universal emptiness. The next morning, the neighbors found an open door in the apartment, and Vitka in his bed. He lay as if alive, only his face was distorted by a grimace of horror, and his eyes were frozen, fixed on the ceiling. There was a tiny, almost imperceptible wound on his forehead, like a needle prick. And next to him was a spinning top covered with frost. His mother was nowhere to be found. She was found a few days later in a forest near the city. She was sitting under an old pine tree, dressed only in a nightgown, and singing a quiet, crazy song in an unknown language. In her hands she held her father's pea jacket, which she hugged like a child. Her face was peaceful, as if she had finally found what she had been looking for so long. The crazy smile was forever frozen on her lips. Local doctors diagnosed insanity on the background of grief and severe depression, aggravated by a long separation from her husband and uncertainty about his fate. But no one knew the true reason for her madness. No one knew that an ancient, icy horror had settled deep in the mother's heart, which stole her mind and forced her to give the most precious thing she had into eternal slavery to the far north.